Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into something pretty cool today.
I think so.
We're talking case study houses.
Oh, I love these houses. Such an interesting chapter in American architecture.
I know, right? Ever feel like good design and keeping things affordable don't mix?
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Well, these houses really tried to prove that wrong. Steel, glass, light, all over the place.
And still keeping the budget in mind. It's remarkable, especially when you think about what was happening back
I
then.
mean, right after World War II?
Exactly. Post-war America. Imagine tons of soldiers coming home, babies being born left and right.
The beginning of the baby boom.
Right. And a desperate need for housing.
So you'd think it'd just be like, let's throw up houses as fast as we can, right?
Yeah, but there was this real drive for something more, something modern.
And that's where the case study houses program came in.
Totally. Imagine Arts and Architecture magazine basically saying, okay, top architects, show us what the future of housing looks like.
I love that. So who are we talking about here? Who are some of these architects?
Oh, the big names. Richard Neutra, Charles and Ray Eames, Pierre Koenig. They were all in the mix.
Those are some heavy hitters.
For sure. And you can't forget Julius Schulman.
Oh, yeah. His photographs of those houses are amazing. Black and white. So striking.
Absolutely. Those photos are iconic, almost as famous as the houses themselves. You see families in these incredible light-filled spaces.
I know. It's not just architecture. It's like he's selling you a whole lifestyle.
It's aspirational, isn't it?
Totally. So this wasn't just some random design challenge. What was it about that time period that made these houses so important?
Well, you have to remember, modernism wasn't just something that popped up out of nowhere.
It had been brewing for a while.
Exactly. Take the Weissenhof-Siedlung in Stuttgart, Germany, back in 1927.
Okay, Stuttgart, Germany. What was happening there?
Well, it was like this housing exposition showing off all the coolest new technology.
What kind of technology are we talking about?
Think flat roofs, really simple shapes, everything geared towards being functional.
So form follows function.
Exactly. And they had some big names involved, too.
Like who?
Well, Le Corbusier was a big one. He was one of the pioneers of the international style.
So they were making a statement with those houses.
Oh, for sure. They were saying housing could be more than just, four walls and a roof. It could be a reflection of modern living.
Okay, so the seeds of modernism were planted in Europe, and then they kind of blew over to America.
Yeah. And America was ready. In the 1930s, you had things like the House of Tomorrow exhibit in Chicago
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
and the Town of Tomorrow in New York.
So America was getting on board with these new housing ideas.
Yeah. People were ready for a change, especially after the Depression. They really felt like technology and design could make life better.
So it was more than just the look of these houses. It was like a whole belief system.
Totally. Better design, better living. And California, especially LA, was a hotbed for this. Frank Lloyd Wright was working there, Rudolf Schindler, Richard Neutra. All these architects were pushing boundaries.
And so when the Case Study Houses program started in 1945,
LA was the perfect place.
prime real estate for architectural innovation. So tell me, what did arts and architecture ask these architects to do?
Their mission, design homes for modern living that were also beautiful and affordable.
It's a stunning design, but practical too.
Yeah, using materials and building techniques that were, accessible to everyone.
Okay, that makes sense. And this program ran for quite a while, right?
Yeah, it was amazing. Over 20 years, from 1945 to 1966.
Wow, 2 decades. I bet you saw a lot of changes in architecture during that time.
Oh, definitely. In the end, they had 36 different designs.
36.
Not
Wow.
all of them got built, though.
But they were actual houses, not just ideas on paper.
Oh, yeah. They were real. And their impact is still being felt. 11 of them are actually National Historic Landmarks now. They're even listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
That's pretty impressive. It must mean they were really onto something. Okay, let's talk materials. Steel, glass, aluminum. Those just scream case study house to me.
They were really trying to showcase these industrial materials.
It's like they were trying to make industrial chic a thing for houses.
Yeah. Think sleek frames, huge windows, and completely different from anything that was being built before.
Were there any other materials they used?
Oh, yeah. They used wood in some really innovative ways, too.
So it wasn't just all about the steel and glass.
Nope. Architects like Thornton Abel, Julius Ralph Davidson, Richard Neutra, they were really into finding new ways to use wood.
Like what?
Like using wood beams and columns, but then pairing that with prefabricated walls. It created this really cool modern look, but with a warmth to it.
I like that. So different materials, different aesthetics, but all united by this idea of modern living.
Exactly. Charles Eames said it best.
How seems.
Yeah. In his book, What is a House? He wrote, "We are interested in the house as a fundamental instrument for living in our time. A house that above all makes use of the best technical engineering of our highly industrialized civilization."
It's kind of interesting, right? They use these industrial materials, things you'd usually see in factories or whatever,
Right.
but they were making these light, airy homes. Did they have any problems with those huge windows? Like, what about privacy?
That's a really good question. And it's something architects are still dealing with today. Those big windows? They're great for the view and for letting in tons of light, but they can be tricky when it comes to privacy.
Yeah, and wouldn't all that glass make it hard to keep the house warm or cool?
You're right, it can be a challenge. Some of the architects in the program use things like shading systems and landscaping to help with that.
So they were already thinking about those issues back then.
Definitely. They were pioneers. And that's part of what makes these houses so interesting. Ready to take a closer look at some of them.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do it. Okay, so we've covered the basics of the case study houses program, but I'm ready for the fun part. Let's talk about some specific houses. Which ones really stand out to you?
Oh, there are so many. But if you want standouts, you got to start with the Eames house.
Ah,
Case study house number 8.
the Eames house. The one Charles and Ray Eames designed for themselves.
The one and only. It's just so perfectly them. Playful, colorful. And get this, it was assembled in 3 days.
3 days.
Yeah, they used prefabricated parts and it just, boom, went up like that.
That's wild. I guess that was the whole point of prefabrication, right? Make things
Huh.
faster and easier.
Exactly. But even back then, it wasn't always that simple. I mean, think about the cost. Finding people who knew how to put it all together and then building codes.
Right, those pesky building codes. Always got to make sure things are up to snuff.
Exactly. So yeah, the Eames house was super innovative, but it wasn't necessarily a realistic option for everyone.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got the Eames house, playful, prefabricated, super fast to build. What else?
Well, you can't talk case study houses without mentioning the Stall house. That's case study house number 22.
Oh, the stall house. I've definitely seen pictures of that one.
It's iconic, all steel and glass, perched on a hillside overlooking LA, pure California cool. Pierre Koenig designed that one.
Koenig. He really had a thing for steel and glass, didn't he?
He did, and he used them so well. The way he designed the stall house, it's like the house disappears and all you see is the view.
Right. It's like you're floating above
But
the city. Was that intentional? Did Koenig actually say anything about that?
he did. He actually said, and I quote, "The owner wanted a 270-degree view, and that was the only way to get it. The house is all glass on all sides except the front. When you are in it, you don't see the house, but the view, and you live with the outside, the landscape."
Wow, that's amazing. He really wanted to blur the lines between inside and outside, didn't he?
Totally. It's like living in a piece of modern art.
Were there other houses that played with this indoor-outdoor thing?
Oh, absolutely. Case study house number 25, the Frank House, is a great example. Killingsworth, Brady and Smith designed that one. It's right on the waterfront in Long Beach, and it has this cantilevered deck that just juts out over the water.
Wait, a cantilever deck. What does that even mean?
Okay, imagine a diving board.
Okay, got it.
That's basically what a cantilever is. It's this super cool engineering trick where you can have a structure that sticks out, but it's only supported on one side. So with the Frank House, you have this deck that looks like it's just floating over the water, no columns or anything underneath.
Oh, wow, that sounds amazing. So you get these uninterrupted views of the harbor.
Exactly. It's incredible.
Or any other case study houses built with cantilevers?
Yep. Case study house number 26, the Harrison House, uses one too. Beverly David Thorne designed this one, and it's up in San Rafael, all rolling hills and trees. He designed the house to kind of step down the hillside, and he used a cantilever to make it feel really light and open.
So cool. It seems like a lot of these houses were all about connecting to the landscape, like blurring the lines between indoors and outdoors.
It's definitely a recurring theme. And it's interesting. We've been talking about these amazing single-family homes, but the Case Study Houses program also included apartment buildings.
Really? I had no idea. I thought it was all about these, like, dream homes for individual families.
Nope. They wanted to explore different types of housing. Case study apartment number 1 was designed by Alfred N. Beadle and Alan A. Daly. It was built in Phoenix in the early 1960s, and it's a great example of how they could apply those same case study principles to denser multifamily living.
Huh, that's fascinating. So they were thinking about affordability and efficiency, but also how to create a sense of community in a more urban setting.
Exactly. They used modular construction and even included courtyards for people to gather in.
Were there other case study apartments?
There were plans for case study apartment number 2, designed by Killingsworth, Brady, and Smith, but it never actually got built.
Oh, that's too bad. But it's cool that they were thinking about those things. It shows that the program wasn't just about these, like, idyllic suburban homes. They were trying to find new solutions for all kinds of housing
And
needs.
those ideas are even more relevant today.
Totally. We're facing so many of the same challenges: affordable housing, denser cities, and how to create a sense of community.
Right, it's like the case study houses were ahead of their time.
Okay, so we've got houses on stilts, apartments, houses that blend into the landscape. What else?
Well, we have to talk about the triad. That's case study houses 23A, 23B, and 23C. Killingsworth, Brady, and Smith designed those.
The triad. What's so special about them?
They were all about prefabrication. Picture this. 3 different houses, each designed for a specific spot in La Jolla.
Okay, so 3 unique houses.
Right, but they were all built using these standardized components, almost like a giant Lego set.
So each house was different, but they had this shared DNA because of those prefabricated parts.
Exactly. It was a really cool experiment to see if they could achieve both individuality and a sense of coherence using prefabrication.
That's so smart. And it's something we're still trying to figure out today, right? How to make prefabricated housing that's affordable and efficient, but also looks good.
Totally. And the triad is a great example of how it can be done.
It's amazing to think about how so many of these ideas, from the case study houses, prefabrication, multifamily housing, are still so relevant today.
I know, right? It's like history repeating itself. But hey, remember how we talked about those weird double assigned numbers?
Oh, yeah. What was up with that? 2 different sets of houses, both numbered 17 through 21.
It's a mystery. No one seems to know for sure why they did that.
Maybe it was a clerical error, or they changed their minds about something.
Who knows? It just adds to the mystery of it all.
I love a good architectural mystery. What about those houses that were remodeled or just disappeared altogether? Any juicy stories there?
Well, case study house number 11, the very first one built, is gone, vanished. No one knows if it was moved or demolished.
Wow, that's crazy. A real architectural ghost story. What about case study house number 14? You said that one was just skipped.
Yeah, they just skipped right over it. No one knows why.
Okay, so vanished houses, skip numbers.
Yeah.
It's like a real-life mystery novel.
Right, and it just keeps getting more interesting. What about those double assigned houses? Were any of those worth talking about?
Yeah, tell me more.
Well, case study houses number 17 and 18, both designed by Craig Elwood, have been remodeled so much that it's hard to tell what they originally looked like.
Oh, that's a shame. It's always sad to see great architecture change beyond recognition.
I agree, but there are others that have survived pretty much intact.
Like which ones?
Case study house number 20, the Bass House, is a great example. Buff, Straub, and Hensman designed this one. It's this beautiful blend of wood and glass tucked into a hillside in Altadena.
Ah, so not all steel and glass then.
Nope. The Bass House proves that modernism could be warm and inviting too. And then there's another Pierre Koenig gem, case study house number 21. This one's in West Hollywood, and it's another stunning example of his steel and glass magic.
Wow, Koenig really was prolific, wasn't he? He seemed to be everywhere.
He was a true visionary. His work on the case study houses helped define an entire era of architecture.
So we've covered playful houses, houses that disappear, houses on stilts, apartments. What a program. Do you think the case study houses lived up to their hype? Did they really create a blueprint for modern living?
That's a great question, and it's one we should definitely think about. I mean, these houses weren't perfect, and they certainly weren't meant to be a solution for everyone, but they were incredibly ambitious. They pushed boundaries and asked important questions about how we live.
And isn't that what good design is all about? Asking questions and challenging the status quo.
Absolutely. And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I think it's important to consider what those questions mean for us today. What can we learn from the case study houses, both their successes and their failures, as we face new challenges in housing and urban design?
That's a great point. We'll be right back to explore that very question. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back, and I'm ready to tackle the big question. What can we learn from these case study houses? Especially today, They were designed for a different time, a different world, really. But can those ideas that were all about affordability, efficiency, being able to adapt, do they still hold up?
That's a good question. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Especially now with housing costs going crazy and having to think about the planet. And people's lives are changing so fast, too. The case study houses weren't perfect by any means, but they do give us some things to consider.
Okay, let's start with affordability. One of the big goals of these houses was to be budget-friendly. They used industrial materials, prefabrication. Do you think those same strategies could work today? I mean, housing is so expensive now.
Well, if we just copied those houses exactly, I don't think it would solve the problem. Things cost way more now than they did back then, and the whole economy is different.
Yeah, true. So what can we learn from them then?
I think it's the principles behind their approach to affordability that are still really relevant. They were all about using space efficiently, choosing the right materials, and embracing prefabrication.
So it's about taking those core ideas and figuring out how to apply them in new ways.
Exactly. We need to think about new materials, new technologies, new ways of building. The case study houses can be an inspiration to be creative and push boundaries, not just copy what they did.
Okay, I like that. What about efficiency? Those houses were designed to be easy to maintain with lots of natural light and these open floor plans. Do people still want those things today?
Absolutely. Those are some of the most popular features in homes today. Think about it, the whole tiny house movement, the trend towards minimalism. The case study houses were early examples of that. Multifunctional spaces, blurring the lines between indoors and out, tons of light and air.
It's funny, isn't it? Those ideas seemed pretty radical back then. Now they're everywhere.
Yeah, it's amazing how things change.
Okay, so what about sustainability? That wasn't really something people were thinking about much in the 1950s, was it?
Not as much as we do now, that's for sure.
So can the case study houses teach us anything about building in a way that's better for the environment?
Well, even though sustainability wasn't their main focus, they did use techniques that are pretty eco-friendly, like passive heating and cooling, making the most of natural light to save energy, and designing homes that really fit into the landscape.
So they were being sustainable without even realizing it.
In a lot of ways, yeah. It just goes to show that good design can have these unintended positive effects, and we can definitely learn from that and apply those same principles in a more intentional way today.
As we wrap up here, I'm thinking about how the case study houses were really a product of their time, but they were also ahead of their time in a lot of ways. They were trying to solve the problems of that era, but they also gave us these ideas that we're still grappling with today.
It just shows you that architecture is always evolving. It has to respond to how people's needs and values change. And the best designs, like the case study houses, they manage to go beyond their time. They still have something to teach us.
Okay, so last question for our listeners out there. Imagine a 21st century case study house. What would it look like? What kinds of materials and technology would it use? What problems would it be trying to solve?
I love that question. That's what's so great about these houses. They inspire us to keep asking questions, to be innovative, to think about new ways of living. And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will design the next groundbreaking house, the one that changes everything.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the case study houses. We'll see you next time.